Great. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a discussion on effective messaging to get out the vote. I'll be your moderator today. For those that don't know me, let me quickly introduce myself, and then we can dive into today's topic. I am Sedan Anlar. I'm a Brussels-based journalist and podcast producer. I actually host and produce Migration Policy Group's podcast called Changing the Table. A quick shameless plug here. I'm also a once undocumented first-generation non-EU immigrant from Turkey. So the topics we will be talking about today speak to me personally as well. Speaking of which, we are just 2 weeks away from the European Parliament elections, which will be held between the 6th and the 9th of June. Over the past few months, we've seen many campaigns encouraging voters and different communities, demographics to go out and vote. Today, we'll be focusing on a very crucial electorate, the EU mobile voters, which refer to those who are naturalized migrants and EU citizens who have moved within the EU, and this group makes up a really big portion of the electoral, and precisely around 15% of the EU's electorate. We will specifically focus on what kind of messaging and actions have been used for different campaigns already, what worked, what can be improved, lessons learned, and of course, what we can do in this very last stretch to get out the vote. And so that more views, perspectives, needs, hopes, aspirations are represented through these elections. I hope that we can explore all these in an interactive way today. Needless to say, that goes for our speakers. Please feel free to respond to each other, talk to each other, and also goes for the participants. So the interaction, exchanges are very much encouraged. To explore these questions and topics I mentioned, we are joined by a panel of brilliant campaigners and activists, starting with Juris Lavrikovs, who is Migration Policy Group's communications manager. Juris brings over 30 years of activism and professional experience in communications, campaigning and advocacy in human rights and social justice organizations in Latvia, the UK, and of course here in Brussels. Next, we welcome Thomas Huddleston, a leading international researcher on migration, integration, and diversity. He currently teaches at the University of Liège. He's also been very much involved in the Migration Policy Group's election-related initiatives like VoteEuropa, which we will talk about shortly. We're also joined by Adel Albaghdadi, who is the founder of We, a Netherlands-based refugee-led initiative which develops various projects aiming at tackling xenophobia and promoting social inclusion. He's also the vice president of Voices of Young Refugees in Europe, and Voicify, the European Forum for Youth with Lived Migration Experience. He's a trainer and advocate for the topics of migration, integration, diversity, and inclusion. Last but not least, we are also joined by Gaspard, Elengesa-Lekele, and Sele, who's an activist and member of the campaign team of Diaspora Vote, as well as a second-year bachelor student in economics. The Diaspora Vote campaign he's involved with is a Europe-wide political awareness campaign to encourage young racialized people to vote. To kick off this conversation, this discussion, maybe we can start with you, Juris, so that you can provide a bit more context into the different initiatives and toolkits that have been developed for the European elections.
Thank you very much, Sedan. And first of all, also big thanks to you for agreeing on such a short notice and pro bono to help us to moderate this seminar. So thank you very much. I have a very particular role to maybe introduce a little bit of a context to this webinar. I mean, I'm relatively new with the migration policy group. I've been only for 1 month, and my role is just to give you a context of how we came to this particular seminar and of this particular campaign. So the webinar is taking place within the framework of our initiative called New Europeans Initiative. And for those who don't know, maybe I will translate what we understand by New Europeans. By New Europeans, we understand people who have arrived and lived, reside here within the European Union, and their descendants. This initiative is co-founded by the European Union. And one of the major aims of the initiative is to close the participation gap and make European democracy fit for increasingly diverse and internationally mobile European democracy. In terms of the way how this initiative works, it works on the basis of 4 major pillars. The first pillar is a research, and through our participation policy index, we provide monitoring and comparative analysis of participation policies. Then it leads to the second pillar, which is tools and guides, where we apply the best participation practices in specific contexts. Then the third pillar is the policies, where we provide briefs and evidence-based policy solutions to facilitate the participation of new Europeans. And then it leads to the fourth and the last and major point, which we will be talking here, is action. VoteEuropa is impact-oriented pillar to mobilize voters to take part in the European election, particularly this year. So to paint a picture of this particular pillar, last year, Migration Policy Group organized a workshop on electoral participation. And as a product of this workshop, we produced a brief entitled Enhancing Electoral Participation of Mobile Voters in the European Election 2024. And you will see, if you would like to make a note, all the documents which I'm mentioning, all the milestones of the initiatives will be placed in a chart on your right-hand side on the screen. And that, in a sequence, led to the creation of development of the Get Out the Vote campaigning tool. A lot of efforts went, and my previous colleagues and my current colleagues worked quite a lot to come out with the a set of ready used materials, insights, and resources which would help activists, other organizations who are working with or engaged with mobile voters and the new Europeans to encourage them to take part in the elections. And within that toolkit, we have advice, suggestions, practical examples of how to study how to understand your target audience, how to find the best ways to approach them, in how to meet their needs, and how to tailor the messages. But in terms of the messages, we developed a slight addition, which we're launching today, and my colleague Thomas will speak later about that, because we're also utilizing the very crucial timing where just 2 weeks before the European elections, the context general in the European politics is very, very complex, sometimes borderline disturbing, and every vote really counts. And we hope that as a result of today's webinar, many of you will multiply our call for mobile voters, for the new Europeans to actively take in election, to understand the importance, to participate, to make next European Parliament truly representative. And I think on this note, I will gradually pass the floor to Thomas, who will be able to talk and guide you through, because Thomas was behind both toolkits and he knows A to Z of the messaging. And so thank you, and I'm passing the floor to Thomas.
Thanks. So I have been thrilled to see how much more action has happened ahead of these European elections. MPG was really leading the way in 2019 to try and create, the first campaign to reach out to diverse and mobile voters. And at the time, we saw that most organizations were really just kind of speaking to themselves, speaking to their national members and not really reaching out to Europe's diverse electorate. So a lot of the Vote Europa recommendations for messaging have already been taken up by initiatives like Diaspora Vote, by ECRA, by ENAR. It's been wonderful that our Voicify partners, Adel and Cyrine, who I was able to work with in the training, have been able to bring out this message to so many other organizations. And so what we wanted to do with this update of the messaging toolkit was just give you all some really simple messages that you can be using right now, particularly through your social media, your newsletters, because often we're not focusing on the messages that are most useful for potential voters. So I just wanted to share what might be some of those specific points. All right, one moment. Let me just pull up my screen if you don't mind. Sorry. All right, so we have 5 messages that we're recommending you think about from now until the elections. So I'm going to start with our last, because it's what we see most common right now, which is we do see a lot of great inspiring stories and testimonies from mobile and diverse voters who are sharing person to person why they're voting, why it matters for them, for their community, what they'd like to see changed in Europe. We give one example here from Yunus Mohammadi from the Greek Forum of Refugees, but many of you are making these kind of testimonies. And this is really important for you to share from your own channel, because people are interested to hear from ordinary voters like yourselves, and they're interested to hear from their own networks. So make an inspirational message yourself, keep it short and sweet and positive, but also make sure that you're giving people the other key information and inspiration that they need. All right, so what might be some of the other points? First off, it's always useful to highlight the number and importance of diverse mobile voters. Our initial estimates are that around 15% of the potential voters in these European elections could be naturalized, second generation, mobile EU citizens. Here in Belgium, where I am, that's 28% of the potential voters. And this is important because we often tend to focus on the people who are disenfranchised and marginalized. But that gives the impressions that actually immigrants don't have power. We do, right? And it's important to remind people that together, if we come out and vote, we're actually going to make democracy work for everybody because we have power in our vote. Second of all, it's important to highlight the contributions that MEPs of diverse background have already made in the European Parliament. Again, we often make the mistake of messaging from a deficit logic, to say that people of immigrant background are not represented, that no one is there representing our voice. But MPG has just come out with a great little fun quiz that you can take to learn about the diversity pioneers in the European Parliament, people of immigrant background, people with different abilities and ages, who have made contributions to creating a more open and inclusive Europe. And it's important for us to recognize that when we actually use our vote and are represented, we can make change. And we'll like to see more change in the future European Parliament. So make sure that you're also highlighting the contributions that a diverse Europe is already making to the European project. Third is, make sure that you're talking to people about the priorities that they care about. Again, we often assume that people of migrant background care primarily about immigration or asylum issues. But what we learned from MPG's VoteEuropa and All Europa campaigns is that people of diverse backgrounds have as diverse interests as every other European does, right? We care about opportunity, we care about the future, the climate. And so the best way in a nonpartisan manner to connect people to their priorities is to share with them the voter aid applications that are used extensively by first-time voters. So we connected people with the EUandI.eu voter aid application from the European University Institute, because you can go on that and you can learn which parties connect most with you on the issues that you care about. And you can take that survey either in the language of the country you're interested or in English. So it's the most multilingual voter aid application tool that's out there. And these are used extensively by first-time voters. So you can say to people, if you want to find out who matches you on the issues you care about, take this quiz. And then lastly, a lot of first-time voters do not know when the election is. They haven't made up their mind about voting, and they need to sort out how they're going to be voting. Again, all of us are really interested in elections and politics, so we think it's obvious. But many people miss the election. So make sure that you're giving people the specific date and where they can find out the information for their particular country. There's great information that's available from the European Parliament and the EU institutions, both for people who are resident in their country and also for mobile EU citizens. So those are our kind of 4 key additional messaging recommendations. Make sure that you're highlighting the numbers and the contributions of a diverse Europe, and make sure that you're connecting people to their priorities and their specific election plan.
Thank you, Thomas. You mentioned that there are narratives out there that migrants are not powerful, or maybe they're not engaged or not political actors. I remember they used something on the last episode of Migration Policy Group's podcast that was kind of related to this, that really stuck with me. And it's kind of like my Roman Empire. I think about it every day. Which is that migration in and of itself is political. It's a political choice. Moving somewhere is a political act. And I love that way of looking at migration and migrants and framing it that way. And you also mentioned that we care and we have diverse priorities, interests that need to be taken account. So thank you. Adel, I'd like to continue with you to look back at the past few months and the campaigns you've been involved in. As we said, you've been campaigning for the European elections, for the Get Out the Vote campaigns, and you've also been part of the migration policy group initiatives that Juris and Thomas mentioned. Could you summarize what the focus of those campaigns was, and maybe map out your messages and activities of those campaigns, and maybe also what worked in terms of messaging and actions, and maybe what didn't?
Thank you so much. Also, thank you, Thomas, for the really concrete examples and also like action points that you highlighted. Yeah, like I've been part of together with the MPG group about this European campaign. From the Voicify perspective, we've been running online training for migrant-led organizations across Europe to mobilize and help give extra practical tools for the organizations, basically to support and also inform and mobilize their fellow participants in their own countries, and also give them the space to localize it, because this is, I think it's also like very important to localize not only with the language that the people speak, but also the way that people communicate with each other, because this is really key. So like, for example, the way that we will be communicating here in the Netherlands will be totally different than the organization will deal with in Poland, for example. Yet we are both voting for the same European Parliament. So this is what we're trying also to do, like give them the tool, yet give them also the flexibility and also the space to localize the context, and also make it more specific to their own need and to their own the people in their own surrounding. We had, of course, like some discussions as well, so it was also very interesting also to exchange ideas, because many of the people who we had the training with were already active or on a national level, or they had already experience in the previous EU elections as organizations. And we try to focus, okay, what are the challenges or what are the good practices that we can also exchange across countries, that like maybe something worked in France could also work, for example, in the Netherlands or in Spain. So, so that was also part of the exchange good practices with each others. Aside from that, I'm also like focused and working on a campaign on a national level in the Netherlands, and that was more the offline part of the campaigning. And then you also have a different interaction with people. And this is, for me, was really like, I got some highlights that I would like also to share it with you here, because I felt like, okay, this could also be interesting to know why people do not maybe are interested in the EU, or why people do not go to vote with the people with migration backgrounds. So like we had a couple of discussions. Many of them had also the lack of knowledge, of course, like, okay, I don't even know when the election is. I received the post, but I threw it away, like the voting card of the EU election. Can I re-ask for it or not? You know, like the whole process was a bit of the unknown for it. The second, which I found quite interesting as well, is the people do not vote as a way of protesting, because like they feel that, okay, what's the EU or where the EU standing now? And I think what's happening now in Gaza, basically like the genocide that's happening there, for a lot of people really touched their hearts, and then felt like, okay, the EU does not speak the language, or does not speak, or does not stand where I would like it to stand. So therefore I will protest and I will not vote. So that for me was like, you know, like very interesting way of protesting, rather than go and change. And that was stand at this point does not stand with what you believe in. Why not making your voice been heard by going and choosing the people that you would like to hear their voices there, bring them there, help them to be there. So that was really like a one way of really connecting the dots. And then you feel like the aha moments from the people, like, oh yeah, that's also possible, you know, like the possibility of that was really interesting. We had also like offline interaction with politicians, like people who are running for the European Parliament seats here in the Netherlands. And that was also nice, because people felt a bit safe, you know, like when in offline settings, so people also dare to ask questions and feel like, okay, it is off records in a way, you know, like people feel I can say whatever I want, I can ask whatever I want, I will not be stalked afterwards online, or I will not be you know, like it's another kind of safety sphere. And also knowing more, and also feeling that this European person, or the candidate, is still reachable, is still like someone that I've seen, I've talked with. So that also was helping to reach the people. And we also had some sessions which not in English or Dutch, you know, so we also had like English in Arabic, English in sessions in Arabic, in Tigrinya, in other like Farsi. So like that was also very important for the people to get this information, not always with like, okay, if you don't speak the Dutch or the English, then you are excluded, but you still have a voice, you still can vote. So by doing that was also led to another kind of discussion, to another kind of dialogue with each others, and the information also reach the people and reach the target group. And then you feel the snowball effect is really going bigger and bigger, and the words is really spreading, because not all the people are fluently in English or Dutch. So why to put this as an obstacle rather than trying to work above it, or, you know, like around it, basically. And from the things that also helped us in the previous period, basically, was also the cross organizations collaborations. Because what's been seen before, that, okay, I got funding for this project as an organization, so I will be doing this. But now I also have the feeling that like all the organization across Europe feel the urge and feel really the importance of this coming election, especially with the statistics and the numbers that we are all seeing and hearing about, and feeling like, okay, we really need to collaborate, we really need to work with each others. So that was also, I think, one of the helping aspects. So like no one think like, yeah, this is my project, this is your project. We are all working together in promoting this election, and everyone for the same mission. So that's, I think, was really very nice and heartwarming something to see. And also like having throughout the dialogue, this also point that Thomas has mentioned, the power of the voices of the people with the migration and refugee backgrounds. So that was also for many people the feeling like, okay, will really my voice matter? one voice, what can change. And then, you know, so then when we feel like, okay, we are collectively doing something. So the feeling of the community, the feeling of like togetherness, and it's not only you who is living, one person in a small village in the Netherlands, but there is also one person in a small village living in East Europe or North Europe or South Europe, at the same time sharing the same struggle or shared the same struggle that you had, and now also sharing the same future or hope for the future that you would like for yourself and for your children. So that was, I think, the highlights that we did, and also not focusing only on the big cities. So that's also like was one of the, I think, could be also like a tip as well, to not focus only on the big cities when we're trying to do campaigning, but also trying to target the smaller villages, and also like not where all the metropolitan is from each country, you know, like not Brussels, Amsterdam, Paris, but more going to more smaller towns, smaller villages, because there are people who living there. There are people who also interact or also have the EU rules and laws also impact their lives, but in a way or another, they feel less connected than the other side of the horizon, basically, in Brussels. I will cut it myself here. Sorry for speaking too much, but it was really like from the passion. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. Yes, a lot of insights need to digest for a second. Thank you so much, though. Gaspard, maybe I can continue with you, because obviously you've been campaigning as well with Diaspora Vote, and maybe same question to you. What was the focus? What messages were communicated? What actions, and what worked and what didn't?
Yeah, I feel that at Diaspora Vote, we had a similar vision of the thing as Adel had in Voicify. Diaspora Vote, that's a EU-wide organization, but not most of our members, permanent of the team, are based in France, Italy, Belgium, and some of them in West Germany. But so we couldn't really do a campaign in Europe, too difficult, and also wouldn't really. So we relied on existing network for certain countries, such as Portugal and Greece. We collaborated with organizations that were already present there, such as the Ivorian community of Greece and inclusive. So in the beginning of the campaign, what we decided was that the campaign would be done by youth European that were racialized and already in those countries. So we trained them. Some of them were from Ireland, Germany, a lot of countries in Europe. Sadly, not all of them, especially East Europe. That's very difficult to reach, and I would have hoped that we would be more efficient in that space of Europe. But so yeah, we gave trainings to them in event management and things like that, and then we just gave them the budgets and said, do the event that you feel is the most important for your community, and do the event that will most represent the needs of the community to make them vote. That were really the main point of the campaign, was that to let the liberty, the freedom to the ambassadors to really plan the event they wanted to do. So some of them did more educative event, explaining how the EU works, because a lot of time I feel that what refrain people from voting is that they don't understand how it works. So they don't understand what is the point of voting. If you don't really see what the European Parliament do for you on your daily life, then you won't go to vote. And yeah, some of them did more like but that's something very important, like Adel said, having politicians meet with people makes it more real for people, politics.
Absolutely. Thank you. Pretty much everyone mentioned some version of target audience and understanding your target audience. So maybe and that's usually one of the first few stages of shaping up these kinds of campaigns. So maybe let's start there. Adel, maybe I can come back to you. How was that process? For example, did you use any tools to both identify your audience, but then also when you were tailoring your messaging to the audience? Any materials, inspirations? Maybe I know that some campaigns used focus groups to also test the messaging as well. How was the process for you?
So like here I got like the two perspective, basically, like perspective of the online vote, the online training that we facilitated, and that was more focused on organizations that are already working with people with the migration and refugee backgrounds. So there we try to give them the tools about how can you create basically a personalized message to connect with your audience. Why you basically, you know, like why are you doing what are you doing? So what's your motivation? So start from the I and then pass it on to the others, so the others can also see themselves in you as an organization, or in you as like a key figure in their community. So that was one of the points that we tried it online. On the offline campaigning, like with all the meetings that we organized, that was more speaking with the key figures within the communities, like the community leaders. I think that was also like a key success for all the meetings, because like I can reach 10 people that I know maybe, but like there is one person, a leader in a community, that can reach 100 in one call, and the people know that person, and they will, like, if that person would say like, okay, let's come to this event and let's come, you know, so like communicating and connecting with these community leaders, it really helped us a lot to reach the unreachable and traditionally reachable target audience, I would say, because like sometimes when you organize such events, you have the normal, or like the everyday people that you see in more or less every event. But then working with these key figures, working with this community leaders, it helped us to reach the unreachable, basically, target audience that usually will not care or will not be interested in such events.
Thank you. Thomas, you mentioned that, of course, everyone has different interests, priorities, focuses. When we say EU mobile voters, we're referring to so many different communities, so many different people. It's a blanket term, but there is obviously a lot of diversity there. So that combined with these European elections that are happening, you know, it comes after so many political societal crises in Europe, so many shifts and changes in the political sphere. How do you decide, considering all these, how do you decide on what to communicate, what to focus on? Kind of going beyond understanding your audience. Now, what do we say? How do we create this message?
Well, I think that all of us have different motivations for why we vote. And so when you're thinking about an inspirational message, be personal, right? I would say, personally, with everything that's going on in the world today, I've come to realize that Europe, Belgium, Brussels is my second home. And I really want this place to be a place of welcome for anyone like me who's coming here for work, for opportunity, for refuge. You know, that's so I think there's a way to help people, as you said, see what's going on in the world and see the value of their vote. But in order to connect people with their political choices, yeah, it's difficult, right? Our tendency is to explain how the EU works and imagine that we know what people's priorities are. I think the best that we can do is orient them to those tools that they can use really quickly, like the EU&I.eu. The Migration Policy Group has created a series of videos called All Europa, where immigrant and refugee leaders are talking about different priorities in the EU and how the EU works in these areas. But as Adel was saying, like, one of the messages I often give is we have more political choices in these European elections than in most other elections. So we often tend to frame the European elections as either a referendum on the EU, is it a good or a bad thing, or we tend to make it about defensive far right. But that also, again, makes people feel really disempowered. Like, I've either got to accept the status quo, or else actually the far right has all the power, when we have so many political parties that you can elect with just one seat. And so I think it's really great to just let people realize you have so many political choices here, and here's where you can find them out. And as Adel was saying, you can find more information on what you really care about, but make sure.
Pains. A couple of things are usually said, right? What you just said, Thomas, we also need to communicate about what the EU does and information to people about the EU. Adel, you mentioned that as well. So that's usually one thing that comes about, especially this time around, is hope. And that is, I mean, that's normal, especially after the past couple of years, but also we're also dealing with specific issues like eco-anxiety, can sometimes be issue for the so one thing does, and the role of elections as well, but then how do we also sound hopeful about the political context? Gaspard, maybe that's something that you've explored, especially when communicating amongst young voters.
Yes, that's really the thing of saying that the vote matter, and that it's not because now the polls are looking bad or something like that, or because we have a lot of crisis, that voting doesn't matter and doesn't have impact, and that the fate of Europe is already decided. It is not. It's important to make realize people that yes, even relative to the vote is important, but even after the election, we don't need to let the things roll and say, okay, I voted and now let's see what happens, and if it's negative, then I can't do anything about it. It's always important, and that's something we do also at Diaspora Vote, to even outside of the campaign and election periods, having people to be interested in politics, having people to want to engage with politicians, having discussions, and sometimes express their opinion on things. So we want to organize also programs such as Work with Your MEP that we organized in 2021, I think, where we just get young people to work with an MEP and try to discuss on some projects or some policies that the EU is doing. That's important for people to realize that even when the parliament is made from certain political groups, you still have an impact. You can still engage in politics.
Yes, that's super interesting, including messages about political participation and democracy in general within an electoral campaign for political electoral mobilization. Very, very important messaging. Did you encounter any specific challenges when you were trying to create a clear focus for your campaign? And also, was there any period where you went with a certain message, but only to realize that it's not working, and then maybe that followed with some adjustments?
I think, to be honest, it was quite a journey, and it was, of course, like with the searching, okay, what could be the best way to reach, and what would be the best way? Is it the offline? Is it the online only? And then we cannot choose one way or another, because like once you choose, you're excluding a group of people. So now we came to conclusion that, okay, we will still organize these kind of an offline events. And then adding to that, and this is something I think I forgot to mention already, one of the activities that we did beside the information and beside the meeting with the politician, but really like stimulation of the voting process itself. So like we really made kind of like a voting place, and then like, okay, you come in, this is where you register, and then you got stamped, then you go there, you choose from the paper, you drop it in the box, and then you leave. So what kind of documents do you need to bring as well? So that was also like for many people breaking a bit the ice, breaking the fear of like, oh my God, you know, like I have never voted in my life maybe, or I have never voted in Europe before. So, you know, like we're talking about like young people, like first timers voter, but also like people who came from countries that for them like election does not even exist, or they don't even believe in it. So that was for them is also like scared in a way or in another, like, okay, I have no idea. What if I don't speak the language maybe very good? Then I will go there, I will be panicking. So give them really, the stimulation was really like a helpful way to break that ice. So now the people know the process, at least, like not a known dark room where they can go and don't see anything there as well. So that was, I think, a helpful way. And again, like the combination, I think, was really and also doing it in a different ways and have different faces as well. So like not one person doing all the videos, but also trying to make different combinations of different faces, different languages as well, different styles of the videos, aside the offline communication as well. And by this, hopefully we are able, or we have been able, and we will still be able to make the change.
A lot of tailoring, right? Maybe it's the same message, but the way we communicate it is different for each group, each person. Yeah, absolutely. And voting is like anything. You just need to do it once. Like if it's a new environment, a new process. I mean, I just found out how to go to a public pool in Belgium for the first time. I've been living here for 7 years. Had to do it with someone else once. Now I know how to do it. It works, but you just need to do it once, and it's like anything else. I wanted to talk about what you said, online, offline. So we talked about messages, what we communicate, understanding our audience, and how we tailor that message. But then the kind of next stage of the process is also to figuring out the how. And since the beginning, methods, some online methods, but of course for each campaign it works differently. Thomas, you said that you've been pleasantly surprised, or you've noticed that there is a lot of mobilization, or there are a lot of events.
So I think been online, and that is tricky because the algorithms also discourage electoral content even when it's nonpartisan. So that's tricky. I think that, of course, person to person is the most effective, but you also, for example, send messages on your social media face-to-face. And I think that whether you're doing something face-to-face or with these types of messages, really keep it short and sweet. People don't have a lot of time to come. If you can just stand up for 5 minutes at a festival, before a concert starts, before a language class starts, before people come together at a school. That's all the time you need. You don't need to get people to sign up for a whole 1 hour long class on the EU. And when you do things face to face, you might not get as many people coming, but those who do come, those are your mobilizers. Those are the people who really care about this. Find ways that you can follow up with them, maybe get them to record an inspiring message and share that with their networks. So each of those people who come to you in person is precious, and they can themselves mobilize at least their family and their friends, maybe even their community, and maybe their followers.
Absolutely. Adel, you already mentioned you've been doing a combination of online and offline. I can come back to that maybe for more specific examples. But Gaspard, what about you? Maybe you could talk about the process of understanding your audience and then formatting your message in a specific way so that you can actually reach them. So that could be online, offline. How did you make those decisions in the process?
When we first began, the first part of the campaign was really first to find people interested already in the EU, because we were looking for ambassadors of Diaspora votes. And so at that point, we really didn't add a tailored message, but we already had a campaign online called Face of Europe, that was about showing that Europe is also people of colors and people of migrants backgrounds. And that was a campaign just online, posting photos of people of colors and saying that's the face of Europe. And so we did that because we wanted something clear and just simple, just something that people didn't have to go through and try to understand, just, and without really a too political message, like not saying you need to vote in this particular way or you need to engage, just saying you need to acknowledge the fact that you are part of the European society and that you are entirely legitimate to this society. And then after, during the campaign, we didn't really add at Diaspora Vote itself tailored message, because the ambassadors were doing the event, and so they were doing it in a way that fitted the best their community.
Right, so it was more almost decentralized. Ambassadors
Exactly.
would then decide how to format. Okay, and so some of those events might have been offline, right? Depending on the target audience. So you've also gone for a bit of a mix, mix there. Okay, perfect. Adel, I wanted to ask you actually, so you've experimented with both as well. I always wonder the difference of feedback and the difference of impact. Of course, it's obviously different, but maybe based on the difference, online and offline can be used differently and strategically at different times. Any reflections on that?
I think definitely the online give us the possibility to talk with people in Italy, in Spain, in Lithuania, you know, like in Estonia. So like we really had people across Europe, while we are everyone in their own comfort of their homes. So that was definitely one of the tools of cross-borders exchange of good practices with the limited resources that we had, you know, so like you don't need to travel elsewhere to know how they are doing it there. So that was, I think, really one of the adding value of the online. Beside, for example, the videos that that everyone was making, basically, that was also that we can also get inspired from each other. Like, oh, I saw this video, maybe I will, like, it's from specific organization with a specific language. I don't understand it, but I like the style. I like how they use the persons, for example, like the who's representing there. So I will try to copy that, or like, you know, like trying to do it in my own aspect as well. So that was the benefits of the online. But again, like with the online, we are excluding a target group, where in the offline, I feel is more warmer. Like you can really go more into the deep, what people really care about, and you really can go into more dialogue with the people. Because with the online, especially with the videos, it's more like, okay, you're seeing stuff, we are sending stuff and hoping that people are seeing it. And I think now every one of us with like the stories, the reels, the everything that we all seeing, like, yeah, 10 seconds and that's it. Okay, next, you know, like I'm not interested in more than that. While in the offline, you really can go deeper, and the people, like, sometimes we really, like, we schedule 2 hours sessions and people are really stuck. And everyone is enjoying it for 3 hours or even more sometimes, because you feel that people also want to talk about these issues, want to speak out, and also want to discuss about it. Because like in many communities, for sometimes even privacy or sometimes also like safety reasons, they are not able to express these opinions. They are not able to talk about what do they think or what do they want, because they still have maybe families back home in their country of origin. So even if it's something about the EU election, yet they are talking about politics that, you know, like in some countries, this is still a sensitive topics. So when we have it offline, we are turning the space into a safe space where people feel like, okay, my voice really matters, and there's a lot of things inside of me that I would like to share, that I would like to talk. So that was really like the benefits, I would say, of doing it offline. And also you see cross-generation discussion and cross-generation dialogue that was emerging basically from the offline, because we had really different target group and they were really exchanging ideas and about like, okay, how to do that, how can we mobilize a bit the older generation, how can you motivate the younger generation. So that was really a field for not only different cultures, different backgrounds, but also different age groups to come together and discuss about the same topic.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that sense of community you mentioned, I guess that can also be fostered more and more easily in offline events, because you can physically see, it's not maybe just likes, it's real people talking to each other. And yeah, we are together, we are powerful, we do have a vote. And all those things are just naturally happening. Let's switch things up. We'll continue this a little bit, but I'm seeing your hands up. Also, this is a great reminder to me and also everyone. If you would like to share anything, ask questions, and just join the conversation, you just raise your hand the Zoom way, the online way, and yes, please, Elisa.
It's me. So yeah, exactly for what you were mentioning, exchange on some experience, because I want to react to this opposition between offline and online. I didn't saw it on participatory democracy questions, but once 3 years ago, I was working for local administration in France, and we had this project of gathering a group of young people from this locality and writing a manifesto for elected officials in order to say what we want to see changing in the municipality concerning environment and youth employment. And in order to have a representative groups of what was society in this municipality, we had to go in social help instances. So it's young people, but young people which are often felt between the cracks. And so people which are a bit defiant when it's regard to politics. So of course this offline thing was mandatory, because we would never have reached this population without going to meet them personally. But it was also a great opportunity to address some opposition, because yeah, people were glad that we were coming to them and saying you can join and express what you want to our politicians. But at the same time, they were like, yeah, it's good, but will it really change something? No, I don't believe in politics. It won't change anything anyway. And if I hadn't been there to exchange with them for 40 minutes and try to explain them why, yes, individually we can't do much, but on the long run, in groups, we can act. And even if we don't directly act, over time, it's by engaging small step by small step that you build a citizenship experience and that you manage to do something. If I didn't have the time to explain it, I don't believe we would have had this group, because this part of the population wouldn't have joined. So meeting physically people will help you motivate them more, because you do take the pain to meet them. It will, of course, be a great way to convince them that they can do something, but it will also open the door to discussion, which can sometimes be conflictual, but in the long run can switch someone who doesn't believe in his power to someone who can. So no, I totally agree with this, coming to meet directly the public you are aiming for. Okay,
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, even if the mobilization is happening offline, we can carry that to an online community and then keep the engagement going, and maybe vice versa. So it doesn't have to be different groups, right? So it can, yeah, that's a great point. Also from our speakers, if anything resonates with you, feel free to join the discussion. Thomas, I'll come back to you in a bit. I have a question for you, but I'll go to Teresa first. Please, Teresa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa Buczkowska. I am the Migrant Political Participation Coordinator at the Immigrant Council of Ireland and editor of the Migrant Vote. We have two elections in Ireland, the local elections and European elections, so we are very, very busy. There is a lot of things that were said that resonated with me, but I have a question to you all. Can you think about how old were you when you voted for the very first time? Can somebody tell me?
18 I was, I guess.
Okay, you think you were 18, okay? Any other answers? Okay, so I voted for the very first time when I was 7. So you know what happened? My mom has 5 children, but when we were young, she only had 1 TV. So to avoid any fights and unrest and violence in the home, she introduced a voting system. That is democracy. Democracy isn't something very big. It's not a scary word. Politics is not something big and scary word. This is something that we do every day. Now, think again. How old were you when you voted for the first time? So this is something that the message that I find is extremely important at the very beginning of any engagement with migrant communities, to bring down the meaning of democracy and politics into something every day that we do every day. That resonates with people because when we talk to them about using those big words as democracy and politics, people think, oh, it's like, you know, prime minister, international trade and stuff like that. No, this is about your daily life, quality of life. The other thing that I found very useful was go to people where they are trapped. What do I mean by that? I tried different in-person interactions with people. So for example, I went to a Polish church to register Polish people. It's not very effective because people are rushing to go into the church. After the church, it was more effective because people had more time, but still they just wanted to go. What was very effective was when I went to a Saturday Polish supplementary school and talked to parents when they were waiting for the kids. They were waiting there. They had nothing else to do. So I could talk to them and I could actually deliver the message. Another good place was English classes. People are already there. They are not rushing anywhere. So that was an interesting learning curve for me. Don't expect people to come to you when you just invited them. As Thomas said, these are the organizers. You can follow up with them. But yeah, voters will not come to you. I'm not that big fan of online. I know the reach is much bigger, but I'm not sure about the effect of it. So we'll see. So we'll see what will happen. I also want to echo what Adel said about showing people how to vote, to build that confidence, showing them how the election card works, because people sometimes have that fear. What if they ask me a question and I don't know how to answer it? This is something that we found really, really important. And especially when the election process looks differently, like for example, in Ireland, we don't choose one candidate, we rate candidates with numbers. This is a big gap there. And then the last thing, and I think this is the role for migrant rights organizations to be the political house. The most common question I was getting when people were like, I would vote in this country, I just don't know the candidates. I don't know who they are, what they stand for. So I always give them the example of my mom. My mom is 72. She can't speak English. She lives in England, and she's an active voter. And I said, like, if my mom can make an effort, like democracy needs effort. If my mom can make an effort to find information about candidates using Google Translate, everyone can make that effort. But we also need to provide that information to people and be that political house. I know there is a challenge with being bipartisan, but nevertheless, having some information about like practicalities. People like practicalities. So what that person already did, not as opposed to what values they stand for, but what they did for the community or for the country or for the I don't know, for people in general. So personal examples are a good thing. Yeah, so that's from me. I'm happy to hear more stuff from you, because that will just let me again to be more effective in this work. But I'm happy that I found this network, and I seems that this network is like, I mean, interest in voting rights for migrants is growing. So happy to engage further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. That was super, super interesting, especially when you said go to people where they're trapped. I always say go to people where they are, but I think trapped is, yeah, much more effective. You're right. That's a brilliant idea. Thank you also for making the time to be here amongst all the election work. Thomas, I was going to come back to you, and now maybe you have even more reflections after Teresa's insights. Maybe we can also talk about this question of online, offline, but considering that it's not a choice either or, how do we use them both effectively? And especially when it comes to the last stretch, right? Maybe one or the other is better to employ or deploy in the last stretch. What do you think?
Okay, wow. Well, I want to echo, Teresa's points that you want to, I often say a captive audience, right? Or pre-existing events. It takes a lot of effort to organize your own events, and then you spend all of your effort just trying to get people to come, right? Better to get an invite to different organizations, explaining you're nonpartisan. That might open some doors. And then again, you can make it short and simple. You can make it very much, as people have been saying, as an exchange, asking people what have been their experiences with voting. Here are the kinds of issues that this level of power is dealing with. What do they care about, right? A discussion is what creates engagement. And then you just have to give them that key bit of information and inspiration they might need. It's really good to use the best available nonpartisan resources. So in our countries, we often actually have materials that give you an overview of all of the parties, or what the candidates are, like the EU and I.EU. The Immigrant Council of Ireland also does simulations, and some of our countries have either online or easy exercises that you can do to simulate voting. And that I saw in watching the Immigrant Council of Ireland's voter education sessions really work, because then people are the voter and they get excited, and then they will ask any of those questions about potential risks or sanctions or problems, and you can reassure them with those key messages. So, definitely the in-person stuff is very meaningful. As you come down to election day, one thing you can consider is how could you make voting kind of like a party? How could you encourage people to enjoy and celebrate election day? Some countries don't allow that because they don't allow you to organize things on election day, but within your legal framework, find ways that people can celebrate so that people want to, on election day, show that they participated, meet up with other people. And those can be online or offline events. But just to say, in the last week before the election, that's really when you want to concentrate most of your efforts. A lot of us exhaust ourselves by doing things so early. whereas a lot of first-time voters are picking up that the election is really happening, that the stakes are important, that the election is close, only in the last weeks before the election. So it is a good idea to try and concentrate some of your efforts there, both offline and online.
Absolutely. I think I've been seeing some of the, okay, we've done our best now, we can kind of wait until the elections, but this is also a reminder that these few weeks are still super, super important. And like you said, first-time voters or people that have been too busy not focusing on it, they're like, okay, I can now engage and decide and then go vote. So absolutely. So we started already talking about the last stretch, so maybe let's focus on that in the last part of the conversation. Gaspard, I want to come back to you. We talked about all the campaigns, lesson learns, and all your activities from the past couple of months and years, of course. With all these considered, how are your activities and messaging? How are they going to look like in the last stretch? And maybe some call to actions from your side as well.
In the last few weeks now, so from, I think that was last week, we decided that we will not have any more offline events, at least not big ones, because we decided that because we didn't want parties, especially from a certain part of the political spectrum, to accuse us of doing partisanism. So we had some problems already, mainly online, that even if we repeat always that we do not push for some parties, we do not want people to vote for certain parties, since we are an organization that is really around racialized people. Sometimes people think we are partisan. So offline events, we try to not have them too close to the election for that reason, so that we can't be framed as from a certain group. But then it's also important to still have people engaged. So online, we still have information going on, mainly about when is the election, how to vote per country, who is presenting per parties, and how the EU works, like how many seats have Belgium, Germany, France, and all. Because yeah, that's still important, and I think it is important that some organizations still do events. We do not, but it's not a general rule, and every organization has a different reality, and it's important that some of us still do events, and individually we still need to attend and to try to speak with other people, because as you said, that's the few weeks here that will be the most important.
Absolutely, thank you. I believe we've got a question. Yes, I can see now. So maybe before we do these last rounds, let's take that question. And yeah, if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat now, or you can raise your hand. I believe that one is from Teresa as well. And also maybe a good question for the next few years as well, in case of hostile environments and campaigning in hostile environments. How do we do it? So Teresa's question is, do you receive harassment for your voter education work, and how do we deal with it? Gaspard, I think you mentioned that, but if you have anything else to add, and if anyone else wants to join.
Yeah, maybe just adding that offline we didn't have a lot, at least on our event we didn't have harassment. We always try to invite, if we invite one political party, we invite all of them, but frequently some of them don't come because that's not in event that interests them. Online, as everyone and as every organization, I think we had some harassment, especially on relating to the campaign Face of Europe. And then what we do is simply remove the comments and try to see with the person that was pointed by this comment if everything is okay, if we can help. That's very delicate, and especially we had one problem offline on an event on the EYE, last EYE. There was some people from far right that were quite hostile, but that's always delicate, and we do not have yet a clear framework on how to react offline to that. But hopefully we don't have those kind of conflicts on our own events.
And it's hard, right? It's hard. Yeah. Thank you. Adel, you can take this question, but also maybe a couple of words on what do you think will work in the next 2 weeks? What will you be doing in terms of campaigning, and what we should do? What should the others do to encourage voters to go out and vote?
To be honest, at least like the plan for reorganization Netherlands, so like more the local campaigning part of that's more we still having a lot of trainings and a lot of meetings basically till the 2nd of June. So like basically 4 days before the election here in the Netherlands, because what Gaspard has mentioned, like, okay, in some context, maybe the offline can have some difficulties, but at least in the Netherlands, we are facing and we are seeing that like it's really working, and we really want to do like till the last point, till the like people are still in the vibe, you know, like they still in the mood of okay, I heard the information 2 days ago and not like 6 months ago. So trying to really keep the conversation alive, and then like we're trying to every time referring to the one we had before, and every time we say like, okay, next the city will be this city, you know, so then to keep the also the feeling of community, and then the train basically is still running and still going on. So that's one of the things that we're doing. Beside that, we're still doing the online videos, the informative online videos, so that like the people offline can still see the online videos and still share it like word to words, but also share the videos, the informative videos as well for their people in their own surrounding. So we really trying now for the last basically 2 weeks now, almost 3 weeks, to keep the push online, offline, and then also like joining whatever possibilities in pre-planned events, even what Thomas has already mentioned as well, like even if it's for 10 minutes or like half an hour, we are happy. Like just give us the platform, give us the stage to just raise the awareness about the topic. One of the challenges I think Gaspard did also mention about like the attendance from politicians. So this is, I think it's really like one of the struggles that we are having. I don't know what's exactly the reason, but sometimes I also feel like, okay, not taking the people with the migration backgrounds seriously enough, or like, okay, what will you bring to the table in a way? So that was also kind of shocking to experience, you know, like that feeling like, okay, you send 20 emails, 100 emails, you hear nothing, or you hear, okay, I will share it internally and that's it. So that's also for me quite strange to came across, especially when we talking about like really good numbers of votes that you can really gain for your own parties. And then like at the end, we also hear that, okay, why are you only having these people in your events? Yeah, because basically these are the only people that we are able to reach, or they accepted to come and join this events, you know. So this is also sometimes struggle that like we don't want every time, and we are for sure not marketing or not like campaigning for one particular party, because what's important for us that the people use their voices, and it's purely free. So like we are not marketing to any kind of parties. What's important that people go and vote, but we also want to have this kind of conversation with politicians. So this kind of sometimes the dilemma.
If the same people show up, then you end up looking like you're partisan, or putting certain people, yeah.
Yeah, but that's why sometimes we also like consciously decide to not invite them to events. So we say, okay, we don't want politicians on this events because like we don't want to be put in a position that like, okay, we are marketing for this political party or for that person, which we are not. So that's why like it's also sometimes we make this conscious decision that we don't want that. We keep the conversation, we have the dialogue between each others, and that's it. So this is the other side of the story.
Absolutely. We refer to them as online, offline, but obviously like offline can mean big events that you organize yourself, or you are invited to talk, like Thomas said and Adel said, at someone else's event. Or it could be talking to people on the street, or it could be talking to your family. And then online can refer to social media, like Gaspard said, those kinds of campaigns. But it could also be sending messages on WhatsApp. My main question, and you can refer to either or both, should we, in the last few weeks, move on to more of those intimate ways of communicating? So if that's online, it could be WhatsApp conversations between, the friend group chats and family group chats that you most of the time mute, or in person as well, maybe instead of big events, talking to people one-on-one or talking to your friends. Would that be more effective in the last stretch? This is a general question, so whoever wants to jump in. Okay, no one is doing it, so I might need to.
I mean, yes, being personal is more effective, right? You mobilizing your friends, your families, your neighbors, your colleagues, your community, people tend to listen. It's still a hard work, even when you do that kind of work, you maybe convince only 1 in 10, 1 in 15 people. So we have to have some kind of healthy expectations for success, but already that's a huge impact. So while some of us are really engaged and we're willing to go out and speak to total strangers, we have to make sure that other people realize that it's great if they individually decide to vote, but if they don't get their friends and family to vote, then their vote doesn't really count, right? We need to make sure that those people are reaching out to their friends and family as well. We do some of the harder, more difficult work.
Before I go to Ulisse, Adel, Gaspard, anything you wanted to add on this? Thank you, Thomas.
Would you like to go first, Gaspard?
No, you can. I will go after.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, for us, we are planning to do a more like customized last minute, basically like on the day of the election itself, like a WhatsApp messages to share it within the WhatsApp groups that everyone is, but also to ask them to spread it, so like on the same day of the election, like, okay, today is the day, like last minute reminder, but also something that we wanted to highlight as well is also the proxy way of using your voice, because like in the Netherlands, maybe for whatever reason, I'm not in the Netherlands on the same day. It does not mean that I cannot vote. So we already highlighted that the possibility of giving the voting pass to someone else and authorize them to go and vote instead of that. So this is something that we already also planning in doing in the last week. So like, okay, it is next Tuesday. If you cannot make it, you can still give your voice to your neighbor, to your family, to your brother, like someone in your surrounding. And on the same day, okay, today is the day. So, so then hopefully by this, the people will still have the time to authorize other people, and hopefully at the same time, on the same day, go and vote. And we're also trying to make more like even like how to say, it's like in Dutch they call it gezellig, which is mean like a really nice cozy day of the election. So don't go by yourself, but let's go together to vote, you know. So like let's go with 5 of us, so make it more an activity rather than like, okay, individual activities, if it's possible, of course, you know, like if people are not on working, or they can still make it. So, you know, like these kind of small tricks still make it like, oh, we're going everyone to vote, we're taking a selfie, we make it fun day. So, you know, it turns into more a fun day rather than like obligation, or rather like, oh yeah, I need to do something bureaucracy. So that's also something that we're planning for the last 2 weeks.
Perfect. And Gaspard?
Yeah, I agree really with what have been said. I think that intimate talking and talking with friends, family, relying on networks, it's very important, especially for the few weeks now, because big events, offline or online, won't really have a big impact, at least not the same as talking to people directly. But then also online and offline, I think the only things that can be done on a large scale would be also doing reminders, as Adel said, telling people that on the day and on the week before, don't forget to vote, because even if they went to events and they understand the importance and all, everyone has his own life, and not everyone is as interested in politics as people engaged in organization. So it's important to remind people to vote also, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will quickly come to you, Ulisse. I think you had your hand up, right?
Yeah, but afterwards, everyone said pretty much everything I wanted. And so I'm just here to agree on what was said concerning the fact that you can address to 15 people. In the end, only 1 will come to vote. But you already did a good job, yes, first because this person is going to vote, but as well because by communicating on the election, even if someone is not going to vote, they maybe come back home, say, hey, say, well, this guy or this girl in street telling me about election, or it was so boring, but someone will have heard of it. And as we said, environment is crucial in order to get people to vote. Just hearing around yourself that people speak of European elections has already an impact. So it's not even getting people to vote, but getting to speak of the elections, which is already an impact.
Absolutely. And then let it multiply. Perfect. Teresa, I'll come to you too now quickly. Thank you so much.
This is a long-term game. This is not only for these elections. So what we are very much aware of is that we are now seeding the seeds for the next elections, just giving people the idea that voting in Ireland is not only an option, but actually something that people should be doing. So we are not expecting that this work will bring a lot of results, but we are going to continue for the next 5 years to reminding people about that. And in 5 years, hoping that those couple of seeds that we sowed this year will actually start growing.
Very, very, very important reminder. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, so, I mean, so many incredible insights, reflections. There's so much. I feel like we can cut this video into 30 parts. I'm sorry, Juris and Özge, you might have a lot to do with this video and just push it out everywhere. Speaking of communications, Juris and European elections, I'll come to you now about a quick reminder, and then I'll go to Thomas at the end so we can wrap it up with that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sadam. And indeed, it's such a big subject and there is so much to share, and it's hard to fit within 1.5 hours. I think we could go on for a few extra hours, but never mind. The time is money, and everybody has lives outside of their activities. It's a short reminder. I would imagine that most of you already know about the competition we're conducting about election videos. Originally, we announced that the deadline for the submission of the video would be the 27th of May. But considering that these are the last days and last opportunities and last chances for people to squeeze in, maybe to come out with some other different ideas, angles, etc. We would like to we're extending the deadline until the 5th of June, which is one day before the election starts in some of the EU countries already. And just as a short reminder, what it's all about, you have a link in the chat, but I'll just quickly show you our short video about the competition. So if anybody still feels, oops, oh my God. Apologies, the YouTube took over. So it's a still chance to put your creative brains together, hands, collective teams, submit your video, and as mentioned in the video, win equipment up to 500 worth. So it could be very useful. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Juris. Okay, great opportunity. And for the last words, thank you for your patience, Thomas. I've been saying that I'm going to go back to you. But the same last question, what do we do in the last stretch? What's important to focus on? Call to action, and maybe if you can also provide a bit of a reminder about those messages we saw at the beginning of the webinar, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, make your video, make your pitch, submit it to this MPG competition and see if you can win some money. And the messaging toolkit from MPG might help you with this. So if I was going to do this myself, okay, the key information, inspiration, that's not so hard for you to find your own words, right? I'd say, okay, you know, here in Belgium, diverse voters like you and me could be 1/4 of all the voters in this June election. And politicians from our communities have been contributing so much to the future of Europe. And we've got so many political choices this June. So just take the test at euni.eu and make sure you have a plan for how you're going to vote on Sunday, the 9th of June, either in person or by proxy, right? You can, I just tried to take all of our key messages and put that in 1 minute, but a lot of people get scared about doing this type of work because it's challenging for them to share about themselves. And I wanted to come back to that quote, Sedan, that you said you really loved, and it says that migration is voting with your feet. And I think if we can bring our personal stories to these elections, we will inspire a lot of people of migrant background, people who've never left their hometowns, because it's really inspiring if you find that way of sharing, you know, why did you come here? Or why did you choose to stay? What are the things that you love about here? What are the things that you want? What are the things that you are contributing? That story of migration is something that can inspire people to also want to turn their story into action.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you to everyone that joined the discussion, for making the time to be here. I know there are a lot of elections going on, like Teresa said, not just the European elections. So all the best with the elections as well. I hope this was useful and inspiring. All the links that were mentioned, all the sources, resources are in the chat, but I'm sure it's also on the Migration Policy Group's website and social media channels. I believe this recording, this webinar will also be available on Migration Policy Group social media channels. Thank you so much, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Seden.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.